Hey guys! So recently I did a video about the living creatures that stand before the throne of God. And we talked about how their job is to be constantly beholding the Lord and how amazing He is. And we talked about how they are specially equipped to constantly be perceiving the glory of the Lord because they have eyeballs all over their body, on their arms and on their wings, under their wings, everywhere they have eyes. And the reason for that is because, eyes have to blink, right? And so if one eye closes, there's always a part of them that is experiencing the glory of God. And for them, they're always crying out, like, you're amazing, you're incredible, right? They're always beholding with these eyes the glory of God. But for them, it's not a duty, it's not an obligation. They're not like, oh yeah, you're amazing, you're still amazing, right? It's something that they're constantly receiving. They are always experiencing the overwhelming nature of who God is. They're seeing it and they're like, I can't believe it. Like, it never gets old for them. They're just amazed by who the Lord is. And I was revisiting that scene that's going on right now before the Lord this week. And the Lord turned my attention to something else that I think is just amazing. And I wanted to share it with you because I think it will so help us as we seek to be like the living creatures, experiencing the glory of God. Not just declaring what we know to be true, like, you're amazing, I know you're good, but the living creatures are actually, they're being hit by it, like they're actually seeing the Lord. And their response is a natural, it's what comes out of them when they get hit. They actually make contact, spirit to spirit, with the Lord. Anyways, the Lord was shifting my attention in that scene this week to some other folks that are around the throne of God right now, declaring His glory. And they're the 24 elders. If you turn to chapter 4 in Revelation, these 24 elders also stand before the throne. And it says that what they do is they take their crowns that God has given them, the symbol of their authority and the glory that God has given them, they cast them at the Lord's feet. And then they cry out, you're worthy, you are amazing, you're glorious, I praise you for who you are, right? And I think that the 24 elders are people. They're humans, they're called elders, and in our culture we call, people in authority, elders, right? They're also wearing crowns, right? So that is kind of something that people do, right? So I'm just assuming that they're human beings that are held in high esteem in heaven. They're elders in heaven. He was showing me an aspect of human relationships that in order for human beings to have an intimate connection, they have to take off first all of their sort of hierarchical position, right? So in order for two people to relate to each other in a really personal way and intimate, they have to set aside their trophies and their giftings and what sets them in a certain class or position in culture. So let me illustrate what I mean with this example, because this is the example that the Lord was giving me as I was praying about it. If you were a king, right, and you had all these subjects, right, in your kingdom, all the subjects would treat you with this deference and respect, right? Like, you're the king, like what you say goes. And there's sort of like this fearful kind of deference that you pay toward your king. But it also creates a distance, right? So if a king is relating to his subjects, then they have to sort of like do whatever he says. And so because of that, it's hard to have a personal connection, right? Now, what the Lord showed me was, but if the king had a newborn son, let's just say, right? And he wanted to have a relationship with this son, he'd have to take off his crown, right? His king status, because he doesn't relate to his newborn baby like, I'm the king, you have to do what I say. Like, stop crying, baby. I've made a law. No babies in my kingdom can cry. I mean, you could do that if you were a king and try to relate to your child that way, but it's not going to be a very healthy father-son relationship, right? It has to be that he takes off the crown and just relates to him as daddy, right? So instead of commanding his son, in the name of my kingdom, like I have written the law, you may no longer cry, you have to just embrace your son, right? And relate to him and talk to him and try and comfort him, daddy to son, right? And as a king looks his son in the eyes, it has to be spirit to spirit, person to person, right? If you want that personal connection, all the hierarchical, human, cultural status symbols need to be put aside. And what the Lord was showing me is that that is what Jesus did when he became a man, right? Like the Lord, before he became human, was enthroned in the glory of God, right? Like the living creatures, they looked at the Son, Jesus, like they did to the Father. There was this separation. I mean, they perceived his glory and they regarded him with awe and wonder. And there's a distance also. There's a fearful kind of like, what you say goes. And, you know, like you're in charge, right? But what Jesus did when he became a man, and then when he poured himself out, even unto death, to erase all separation between us and him, was he took the crown and he set it aside. And like the king who had the baby son in his arms, he took away the hierarchical sort of like, this is how you behave before me because I'm in charge, I'm the king. He put that all aside and he looked us in the eyes and he said, I don't want that to be between us. The way I want us to relate to one another is spirit to spirit and heart to heart. And see, that is why I believe the 24 elders take off their crown as well and cast it at the Lord's feet, because it would be pretty weird if like a king is holding his son in his arms, or let's say the son has grown a little older now and they've developed this rapport, right? Where it's father-son. It's not king and subject. It's a heart-to-heart relationship. And that's the way the king has set it up. Wouldn't it be odd if then, after a while, the son starts coming to the king and he's like, listen, father, you can't just talk to me like that. I'm a prince, you know, like I have a crown, and I think it's about time you start treating me with the respect that I deserve, right? It would be ridiculous if the prince tried to lord his position over the king. Because actually, if we're gonna play that game, like I'm the king, so get in line, right? That's not the interaction that the Lord wants to have with us. But it takes two to tango, right? It takes two for a spirit-to-spirit connection to happen, right? So when the prince realizes that he's a prince, right? When we realize that, hey, you know, I have some gifts in life. Like I've got some things going for me, like in culture, in the world, like I have this status, right? Like I'm a big deal. Or it could be the opposite. Like you see all the hierarchy, right? And you're like, I'm nothing, like I'm a loser, right? And so you come to the king and you're like, why would you want anything to do with me? Like I'm just a little, you know, homeless guy. Like I don't have anything going for me. Like I'm not worthy, right? We have to decide to take off all our status symbols as well and cast them at the Lord's feet. In other words, like, this is meaningless. I don't want it to be about this. I want it to be the way that you want it. The way I see, the way you've shown me that you want it by coming and becoming a man like me, right? And dying to eradicate any separation, right? I see what you've done and I want it that way too. So the prince, when he realizes that there's another sphere of life, like the sphere of culture and hierarchy and status and gifting and trophies, and lording it over each other and positioning yourself. That whole culture of this world, when he comes into the awareness of that, we then need to decide, I don't want to operate that way with you either. I want to put all that aside as well. And I want to relate to you, spirit to spirit, heart to heart. And the Lord was just showing me how beautiful that is. I used to read that passage in Revelation 4 where the 24 elders cast down their crowns. And I thought, they're paying the Lord respect. They're saying, I value you more than I value the gifts that you've given me. And that's all valid. That's true. But the Lord's showing me it's more than that. It's setting aside that whole part of life and saying, that's not how I want it to be between us either, Father. I want it to be personal. I want it to be intimate. So let's put all that aside and let's come closer, right? So the king wears the crown when he's on the throne and he's presiding over his kingdom, right? But there's a time of day when all the subjects go home and the king is left alone in his palace with those who that are part of the family, that live in the palace with him, right? What happens behind those closed doors? That is where Jesus wants you and I to be. It's what happens, at the dinner table. It's what happens between the bride and the groom in the bedroom after everyone else goes to sleep, right? And I'm not just talking about, the sexual side of it, right? I'm talking about those conversations that happen between a husband and the wife at the end of the day, like the nitty-gritty, the personal, right? That is where Jesus wants us to dwell. That's where he wants our life with him to be. And so I just wanted to present that perspective to you today, that is where the Father, that is where Jesus, that's where the Spirit who is in our midst right now is looking to draw us. It's where all of the positioning is set aside, where it's not about who you are and who I am. It's about who we discover ourselves to be when we're just with each other. That is where that is how we're meant to interact with the King. It's a personal discovery. You find out who you really are when all of that is set aside. You'll discover yourself and you'll discover the Lord and who you are to each other when it's just spirit to spirit. When it's like the father, the king who's the father holding the baby in his arms, and I have 5 kids and I remember so many precious moments where my son or my daughter, I'm just holding them in my arms. I know you can't see my arms right now, but I'm doing this. And we're just looking each other in the eyes. And a baby, part of what's so precious about a child is they don't even know about that world yet, And you can learn a lot about who an adult is by how they interact with children, because they can't with children you can't hide behind those sort of like cultural structures, right? Like, I'm the general, I'm the professional, I'm this, I'm that. People treat me with deference, and all those sort of roles that we play. With children, it's kind of like, it's just, you look each other in the eye and right? Like, I know there's a connection happening here, or this is kind of awkward, right? That's how it is with your children, right? Like, they don't recognize any of those things. They just look you in the eye and they want to know, like, are you interested? Do you care, right? Like, do you want to connect with me? And that, believe it or not, that's how the King of the universe wants to interact with us. We just look each other in the eye. We just stand there, heart to heart. And there's that connection, right? And I just want to present that to you guys. Jesus wants that type of connection with you and I, where it's we're laid bare. It's like we're naked before each other, and it's not just clothes, but it's all the things that we clothe ourselves with. We lay it all aside and we just look each other in the eye and we know, oh, it's like you know who you are because of the way he looks at you. And you know who he is because you see him and you discover who he is to you. And when that happens, when you have that raw of a connection with the Lord, that is how, it's in that vulnerability that we receive everything that we're looking for. There's healing in that connection. When you have that connection with the one who's really in charge, like let's say that you were part of a kingdom and you had an audience with the king behind closed doors, and you have this time where you sit at the dinner table with the king and you realize, whoa, I really connect with my king, right? Like there's a real connection. He really likes me. And you talk and he tells you, I want to do this for you in your life. And you realize like he's really in your corner and he's going to help you with your life that's happening outside of those closed doors. The next day, when you're back out there in the kingdom and the king's back on his throne and the kingdom is functioning again as it does, and you know now that the king is in your corner, it becomes less important what all the other subjects think about you. Like Joe Schmo might be like, well, I'm still after him. Like, I'm going to take that property of his and I'm going to crush his business, and I'm going to do this and that. I'm playing this game with him. But you know that the king is in your corner and he's told you what he's going to do for you in his kingdom. It becomes less important what other people are planning. And that's just one example, but everything that we are looking for, that we need and we're seeking in our lives, healing, inner healing, like knowing who we are and being confident in it, knowing our purpose and calling in life, physical healing even, everything that we need is not found through our position. You can even have a position in the kingdom of God, right? Like, I'm this, I'm a big deal. Like, I know everything there is to know about Christianity or all of that stuff. You could know it all in your head, but that's not where the healing and the actual things being made right is found. Where it is found is not through knowledge. It's through interaction. It's when all that stuff is put aside and you just come and you are with the Lord. And I can't give you a 12-step program on how, once you come into the, behind closed doors with the king and you're just interacting with him face to face, these are the 12 steps that you take to get the healing that you need or any of that stuff. It's just not how it works. I can't tell you how you are meant to interact with the Lord. I can't even tell myself how I'm supposed to do it because that's not how relationship works, right? It's just about daring to go to that place. It's about daring to set aside all the programs and hierarchies and just allowing yourself to be raw with the Lord, to look him in the eye, to interact with him. And so I pray that you will understand, perceive in your heart what I'm talking about, and that you will dare to come face to face, heart to heart with the Lord like I'm talking about, because everything that a believer is looking for is in that place with the Lord. So, Lord, I ask that you help everyone watching this video to hear with their hearts and not just their ears. Help them to come into that place with you that I'm talking about and to interact with you in that personal, intimate, spirit-to-spirit way. And let them find everything that they are looking for, and let them discover all the goodness that you have for them, that you have for all of us when we come to that place with you. You know, what does the one who owns it all, the one who is Lord and King of all things, what can we give him? What does he want out of this whole arrangement of creation, right? I would argue, I believe that what he's really looking for is intimate relationship. The only thing he doesn't have already is our hearts, right? And that is why he created the whole world, so that he could have more people like him that can share in the love that he wants to give. And then once they receive that love, to give it back to him. It's what it's all about, guys. And so I hope that you will not just hear what I'm saying and understand what I'm saying, but take what I'm saying and go for it and use it and come to that place with the Lord. Because the more people, this is the awesome part, that if you come to this intimate place with the Lord and you receive everything that God has for you and you are enriched in your life beyond our imagining through becoming that intimate son with a loving Father, that's to my benefit too, right? In the kingdom, if you have more, I don't lose, because what you're given is given to share as well. If I become richer, it's for your blessing. It's not excluding you. It's to bless you even further, because what he has to give is infinite. It's eternal. It's everlasting, and it is all a gift to be shared. And what you receive will benefit me. And what I receive in that place with the Lord will be a benefit to you. And so I am so excited about what you will receive in that intimate place with Jesus, and to discover the glory of what that reveals, because the kingdom that we are inheriting is good beyond our imagining. And every time one receives, we all benefit. So I bless you with that. I hope it blesses you, and I look forward to seeing where it all leads in Jesus' name. Talk to you next time.